You think love is about proving you can handle anything. You believe if you keep showing him your strength, he will never leave. But here is the truth most people never see coming. Sometimes the very armor you wear to protect yourself becomes the wall that shuts someone out. Some men are not walking away because they cannot handle your power. They are walking towards something else, a place where they feel safe enough to be fully themselves. Carl Jung once said that we all have hidden parts, the pieces we try to keep in the shadows. What if your strength hides those softer parts that make connection possible? Stay with me until the end, because what you discover today could be the moment that changes not just your relationships, but the way you see yourself forever. You live in a world that tells you strength is everything. From the time you were a child, you heard the message over and over: stand on your own, never rely on anyone, show them you can survive anything. You learned to solve your own problems, to keep your voice steady even when your heart was breaking, to push forward no matter how heavy the load felt on your back. People call you unstoppable. They admire you for never falling apart, for always being the one who has it all together. On the surface, that image shines. You walk into a room, and people see confidence. They see control. They see someone who needs nothing from anyone. But you know the truth. They cannot see. There are nights when the weight of always being the strong one leaves you exhausted in ways no amount of sleep can fix. There are days when you feel like you are living behind a mask, performing a role that the world expects from you. Carl Jung called this mask the persona, the version of yourself you craft to meet the demands of society. The persona is polished, composed, ready for the stage. But behind it, the real you waits. The real you sometimes feels tired of being admired for the very walls that keep people from truly knowing you. The real you craves more than applause. You crave a place where you can set the armor down, even for just a moment. You have been told to never need anyone, as if needing is a weakness. But deep down, you long for someone who will not punish you for showing a softer side. You want a space where you can speak without guarding every word, where your tears are not seen as cracks in your foundation, but as proof that you are human. The challenge is that the strength you have built for survival can, in love, feel like distance to someone else. Imagine this. You are on a bridge, and on the other side is someone who wants to reach you. They can see you. They admire the way you stand tall in the storm. But when they try to step closer, they find the bridge is lined with gates. Each one is locked. And even if you hand them a key, they hesitate, unsure if you truly want them to enter. From the outside, you are the ideal partner. Independent, driven, capable. But in the quiet moments, your partner may feel that there is no room for their own vulnerability. They may feel that you are so self-sufficient, there is no space for their care, their comfort, their presence. And slowly, without even realizing it, they may start searching for a place where their own heart feels safe to be open. This is not about blame. It is about a truth many never talk about. Strength without emotional safety can create distance, even when love is still there. And this truth is where our journey begins, because it is here, in the space between your armor and your heart, that everything can change. Emotional safety is not a complicated concept, but it is one we often overlook. In simple terms, it is the feeling you get when you can lay your heart on the table and know it will not be crushed. It is the comfort of speaking without rehearsing your words, of being seen without fear of judgment. It is the space where mistakes are not weapons and where your raw, unfiltered truth is not met with coldness or criticism. In that space, vulnerability is not risky. It is welcome. Carl Jung spoke of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we push down, the fears and insecurities we hide because they do not fit the image we want to project. For many strong women, the shadow holds tenderness. It holds the desire to be comforted, the longing to be cared for, and the quiet fear of being abandoned if those needs are revealed. So the shadow is kept in the dark, and strength stands in the light. The problem is, when the shadow stays hidden, connection suffers. I once heard a story about two women in a man's life. One was extraordinary by most standards, intelligent, ambitious, flawless in her composure. She never let her voice shake, never showed uncertainty. The other was quieter, less outwardly dazzling, but she listened in a way that made him feel like every word mattered. When he spoke about his failures, She did not rush to fix them or dismiss them with a cheerful, "You will be fine." She sat with him in the discomfort, and in her presence he felt lighter. You might think you are being strong when you always have it together, when you never let the cracks show. But he may feel that there is no space for him to show weakness around you. Without realizing it, your unshakable image might leave him feeling like his own struggles have no place in your world. Emotional safety is not about weakness. It is not about letting go of your independence or softening into someone you are not. It is about presence. It is about the quiet power of sitting with another person's pain without trying to control it or erase it. It is about acceptance, the kind that says, "I see you, even in your mess, and I am not going anywhere." Here is the truth many resist. The most magnetic relationships are not built only on admiration. They are built on trust that you can show your whole self, even the parts you are not proud of, and still be loved. When that trust exists, people lean in. When it does not, they step back. And here is where the paradox lives. You can keep your armor high and your image intact, and the world will respect you for it. But respect alone cannot sustain intimacy. If you want someone to meet you in the deepest parts of yourself, you have to let them see you there. What if the real power is not in proving you can do it all, but in allowing yourself to not have to? What if letting someone witness your shadow, the fears, the flaws, the tenderness is not a loss of strength, but the highest form of it? You can still be strong. You can still be the one who stands tall in the storm. But when the rain comes, you can also be the one who reaches for a hand instead of standing alone. That is emotional safety. And it might be the very thing that turns connection from something fragile into something unbreakable. Close your eyes for a moment and picture the fortress you have built over the years. The walls are high, carved from the stone of hard-earned lessons. The gates are heavy, forged from promises you made to yourself after the last time someone hurt you. It is beautiful in its own way, solid, unshakable, impossible to breach without permission. You built it to survive, and survive you have. But inside those walls, the air is still, the quiet is constant. And while no one can harm you here, no one can truly reach you either. Carl Jung would call this the space before individuation, the place where you live divided from certain parts of yourself. Individuation is the journey of bringing all those parts together. Not just the warrior who can hold the line, but the softer presence who can welcome someone across it. It is not about tearing down the fortress entirely. It is about learning when to open the gates. You have been the guardian for so long that it feels like second nature. You measure people by the way they approach, testing their intentions before they are allowed to step closer. Sometimes, you wait for proof that they will not leave before you let them in. And yet, the irony is that the very walls that keep out the untrustworthy can also keep away the ones who would have stayed. There are two truths here, both equally real. The first truth is that your strength inspires him. He admires the way you can stand through the storm without bending. He sees your discipline, your independence, your ability to navigate life without leaning too heavily on anyone else. That strength is magnetic. It is what drew him in the first place. The second truth is that your walls exhaust him. He may not say it out loud, but there is a weight in always having to prove himself worthy of a closer place in your life. He wants to be the one you trust with your fears, not just the one you celebrate your victories with. And when he feels there is no room for his own weakness, he begins to wonder if you truly want to share a life, or if you simply want someone to witness the one you have already built alone. This is not about blaming yourself. It is about recognizing that relationships shift when both people feel safe enough to be fully themselves. Emotional safety works both ways. Just as you need to feel you can be vulnerable without being judged, he needs to feel the same. Without that exchange, intimacy becomes a performance rather than a shared reality. So here is the question you may not have asked yourself yet. Have you ever noticed how the people who make you feel most safe are the ones you want to open up to? Think about it. You do not share your heart with the loudest voice in the room or the person who demands your trust without earning it. You open up to the one who stays steady when you falter, who listens when you struggle to find the right words, who makes you feel like even your flaws are welcome at the table. What if you could be that for someone else, without losing the strength you have fought so hard to protect? What if opening the gates of your fortress did not mean surrendering control, but simply letting the right person step inside? The truth is, The fortress was never meant to be your permanent home. It was meant to give you the safety you needed until you were ready to live beyond it. And perhaps now, the real work is not in building higher walls, but in learning the difference between guarding yourself and isolating yourself. When you start to see the gates not as barriers, but as invitations to trust, something shifts. You stop measuring love only by how much it admires your strength, and you start valuing the love that also honors your softness. That is the beginning of integration. The moment you stop being divided between the self the world applauds and the self who quietly longs for deeper connection. And maybe, just maybe, the person who has been waiting outside your walls all along will finally see the light in the window and know it is safe to knock. Carl Jung believed that every person carries both masculine and feminine qualities within them. He called the inner feminine the anima and the inner masculine the animus. These are not about gender, but about energies. The animus is the part of you that acts, plans, achieves, and pushes forward. The anima is the part that receives, nurtures, listens, and feels. Together, they create balance. But when one is ignored, life starts to feel lopsided. You have spent so much time living in your animus. You are the doer, the problem solver, the fighter who gets things done. It has kept you safe. It has made you respected. But here is the quiet truth. When you only live in that energy, you keep your anima, your softness, your receptivity, your emotional presence locked away like a secret you cannot afford to reveal. Men, often without realizing it, are drawn to women who awaken their own inner anima, the part of themselves that feels deeply, that longs for tenderness, that is willing to set down the armor for a while. Emotionally safe women have a way of making space for that. They do not demand constant proof of strength. They invite the kind of conversations where silence feels comfortable, where unspoken fears are not shamed but understood. You might think that if you lead with softness, you will lose your edge. But here is what happens instead. When you integrate your animus and your anima, you bring the full spectrum of who you are into the relationship. You can still be the one who takes decisive action when life demands it. You can still stand firm in the middle of chaos. But you can also sit in the quiet moments without trying to fill them. You can hear someone's pain without rushing to fix it. And here is where connection changes. When a man senses that he can be both strong and vulnerable with you, he is not just staying for the admiration of your independence. He is staying because you make him feel whole. Your strength inspires him, but your softness gives him permission to be more than the role he feels he must play. You have been living only in your animus, the doer, the fighter. But what happens when you let your anima breathe? What happens when you allow yourself to be the place where someone else can set down their burdens, even as you keep your own inner fire alive? Because here is the thing. When you integrate both, you become the partner he did not even know he was looking for. Not because you changed to please him, but because you became more fully yourself. This is not about abandoning your independence. It is about expanding your capacity to connect, to give, and to receive. When you embrace both the warrior and the nurturer inside you, you stop choosing between strength and intimacy. You live in the place where both can exist. And in that space, relationships have room to grow roots deep enough to weather any storm. That is the quiet power of integration, and it is far more magnetic than strength alone. She used to believe she had to earn her place in every room. Her name was Claire, and from the outside, she looked untouchable. She had the career, the composure, the perfectly curated life that made people think she had no cracks in her armor. But when the doors closed and the lights dimmed, she felt an ache she could not name. It was the ache of never being fully seen, of never feeling she could lay her heart bare without fearing it would cost her everything she had built. One evening, sitting across from a man she loved but could not quite reach, something shifted. He was telling her about a failure at work, his voice low, his eyes distant. She heard herself respond with the usual reassurance, the polished words that were meant to lift him but somehow kept him at arm's length. And in that moment, she realized she was not letting him see her either. She was not speaking from her heart. She was performing strength instead of offering presence. That was the start of her awakening. The first shift was from defense to openness. For years, Claire had lived in a constant state of readiness, always prepared for disappointment, rejection, or betrayal. It was safer to keep her guard high than to risk letting someone close enough to hurt her. But she began to see that this defense did not just protect her from pain, it also kept her from joy. So she started small. She shared a story from her past she had never told anyone, not as a test, but as a gift. She watched his face soften. She felt the space between them change. And she understood, for the first time in years, that letting someone in could be an act of strength, not surrender. The second shift was from performing to being. Claire had mastered the art of showing up as the version of herself she believed the world wanted to see. Every smile was perfectly timed, every word carefully chosen. But she began to notice how exhausting it was to live in that constant performance. So she experimented with being instead of proving. She let herself laugh too loudly, admit she was tired, speak without editing her thoughts into perfection. And the more she allowed herself to simply exist as she was, the more connected she felt, not just to others, but to herself. The third shift was from isolation to connection. Independence had been her shield for so long that she wore it like a second skin. She told herself she did not need anyone, that relying on others was weakness. But as she opened up, she discovered something she had not expected. True connection did not take away her independence. It deepened it, because now she was not carrying the weight of the world alone. There was someone walking beside her, not to take over, but to share the journey. Carl Jung would have called this individuation the process of integrating all parts of the self into a whole. Claire was not becoming someone else, she was becoming fully herself. She was learning that her strength was real, but so was her vulnerability. That she could be both the one who stands in the storm and the one who rests by the fire. That these parts of her did not cancel each other out, they completed each other. You can choose this too. You can keep your power and open your heart at the same time. You can stop proving and start living. You can stand tall without closing yourself off. And you can let the people who matter see the whole of you, not just the parts that look perfect from a distance. You do not have to choose between being strong and being loved. The truth? Real love needs both. Because love without strength cannot survive the storms. And strength without love is nothing more than a fortress with no one inside. When you bring the two together, you do not just create a relationship. You create a place where both hearts can finally rest safe, seen, and free. Strength alone can carry you far, but it is emotional safety that allows love to truly last. The armor you have built is not wrong. It has kept you standing. But connection is not sustained by admiration of your strength. It is nurtured in the moments when someone feels safe enough to stand with you, unguarded. And when you feel safe enough to let them in, you have the power to be both unshakable and deeply human. You can hold your ground without closing your heart. You can inspire with your resilience and connect through your vulnerability. These two truths are not in conflict. They are the foundation of love that endures. If this message spoke to you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Drop a comment about the moment you realized strength is not the whole story. And subscribe so you do not miss the next step in your journey. Because your story is still unfolding, and the next chapter might be the one where you finally get to be both strong and free.